Let me ask you something. And I want you to really think about this before you answer. When was the last time you truly woke up feeling like yourself? Not dragging yourself out of bed, not reaching for coffee before your feet even hit the floor, not spending the first hour of your morning just trying to convince your body that the day is worth showing up for. When was the last time you actually felt vigorous, energized, present? If you're a man over 50 and you had to pause before. Answering that question, then what I'm about to share with you in this video is something you genuinely need to hear. Because what most men in their 50s, 60s and beyond are experiencing right now is not simply getting older. It is not inevitable. It is not just part of the deal. And it is absolutely not something you should be quietly accepting as your new normal. What most men are experiencing is a biological shift, a quiet, gradual, deeply consequential change that begins somewhere in the mid-40s and picks up speed with every passing year. And the frustrating part, nobody tells you about it in plain language. Nobody sits you down and says, look, here's what's happening inside your body, here's why you feel the way you feel, and here's what you can actually do about it. Instead, you get shrugged shoulders from a 10-minute doctor's appointment, maybe a prescription, maybe a pamphlet, and a polite suggestion too. Watch your diet and exercise more. That's not good. Enough? You deserve better than that. So today I want to talk to you about one single nutrient, one vitamin taken at a very specific time of day, or rather a very specific time of night, that has a profound research-backed connection to male vitality, to the kind of deep restorative sleep that actually heals your body, and to something that men over 50 lose quietly and gradually, but almost never talk about out loud. And that is vigor. That deep internal sense of strength, drive, and aliveness that used to come naturally. Now, before I tell you what this vitamin is, I need you to understand something first, because this isn't just about popping a supplement and calling it a day. That's not how the body works. That's not how healing works. What I'm going to share with you today is a piece of a larger picture, and unless you understand that picture, the piece won't make sense. So stay with me, because the next few minutes are going to reframe the way you think about your health after 50 entirely. Here's what nobody wants to admit. The male body after 50 is under a kind of metabolic and hormonal pressure that is genuinely unprecedented in human history. We are living longer than our ancestors did. But we are living longer inside bodies that are being constantly assaulted by ultra-processed food, artificial light at night, chronic low-grade stress, sedentary routines, and nutritional deficiencies that have become so common we've stopped recognizing them as deficiencies at all. We just call it aging. But aging and decline are not the same thing. I want you to really hold on to that distinction. Aging is time passing. Decline is what happens when the body is not given what it needs to adapt to that time. And one of the most critical things the male body needs after 50 and almost universally does not get enough of is what we're going to talk about today. Let's talk about what is actually going on. Because I think when men understand the biology, when they can see the mechanism, not just feel the symptoms, something shifts. You stop blaming yourself. You stop thinking you're lazy or weak or just not trying hard enough. And you start understanding that your body is responding perfectly rationally to a set of conditions that have been slowly building for years. Here is where it begins. Somewhere around the age of 45, the male body starts producing less of a hormone called testosterone. Now, I know you've heard that word 1,000 times. It gets thrown around in supplement advertisements and gym conversations and men's magazine headlines. But I want you to forget all of that noise for a moment, because testosterone is not just about the things those advertisements want you to think about. Testosterone is a master regulator. It governs your energy, your mood, your motivation, your ability to build and maintain muscle, your bone density, your cognitive sharpness, and critically, your sleep quality. Every single one of those things. And it declines at roughly 1 to 2% every year after 40. By the time a man is 60, he may have lost 20 to 30% of his peak testosterone levels. Some men lose even more. But here's where it gets more complicated. Testosterone doesn't just drop in isolation. It's connected to a cascade of other hormones and biological processes that all shift simultaneously. One of the most important of these is melatonin. And this is where most people's understanding stops being accurate because they think melatonin is just a sleep hormone, something you take when you have jet lag, a gentle nudge that helps you drift off. That is a profound underestimation of what melatonin actually does. Melatonin is produced in the pineal gland, a tiny structure buried deep in the center of your brain. And its production is directly tied to darkness. When the sun sets and light fades, your pineal gland begins releasing melatonin into your bloodstream. This signals to every cell in your body that it is time to shift into a repair and restoration mode. Your core body temperature drops, your heart rate slows, your brain begins cycling through the deep stages of sleep, where the real work happens, where growth hormone is released, where cellular repair occurs, where memories are consolidated, where inflammation is managed and reduced. Now, here is the critical piece. Melatonin production peaks in young adults. And then, just like testosterone, it declines with age significantly. By the time a man is 60 years old, his pineal gland may be producing less than half the melatonin it produced when he was 25. Some studies suggest the decline is even steeper than that. So what does this mean in practical terms? It means that the man over 50 is simultaneously dealing with lower testosterone, lower melatonin, disrupted sleep architecture, reduced growth hormone output, and elevated cortisol, because when sleep is poor, the stress hormone cortisol rises, and elevated cortisol further suppresses testosterone production, which further disrupts sleep, which further raises cortisol. It is a cycle, a biological feedback loop, and once you are caught inside it, simply trying to sleep better or managing your stress is not enough to break it. This is the real picture of what aging looks like for men. Not a single problem, a converging set of problems, each one feeding the others, and sitting quietly at the intersection of nearly all of them is one vitamin. One nutrient that the male body desperately needs, especially after 50, and that the vast majority of men are not getting in adequate amounts. All right, let's talk about it. The vitamin I want to discuss with you today is vitamin D3. And before you close this video, before you think, I've heard about vitamin D, I know about vitamin D, this isn't anything new, please stay with me. Because I promise you, what most people know about vitamin D is the surface. What I'm going to share with you goes considerably deeper than that. And the timing piece, the night piece, is something that genuinely surprises most people, including many clinicians. First, let's establish something fundamental. Vitamin D3 is not actually a vitamin in the traditional sense. Technically, biochemically, it is a sequesteroid hormone. It behaves like a hormone. It is synthesized in the skin from cholesterol when exposed to ultraviolet B radiation from sunlight. It travels through the bloodstream. It binds to receptors located in virtually every tissue and organ in the human body. Your heart has vitamin D receptors. Your brain has vitamin D receptors. Your immune cells, your muscle tissue, your gut lining, all of them have vitamin D receptors. This is not a peripheral nutrient. This is a central regulatory molecule. And when it is deficient, the downstream consequences are wide, deep, and often invisible until they become undeniable. Now, here is the number that should concern every man watching this. Global research consistently shows that somewhere between 40 and 80% of adults are deficient in vitamin D. In certain populations, particularly people living in regions with limited sunlight, people who spend most of their time indoors, people with darker skin tones, and critically older adults, the deficiency rates are even higher. And men over 50 tick nearly every box on that list. You're less likely to be outdoors for extended periods. Your skin's ability to synthesize vitamin D from sunlight decreases with age. Your kidneys, which convert vitamin D into its active form, become less efficient over time. And your body fat, which tends to increase with age, actually sequesters vitamin D, pulling it out of circulation and making it less bioavailable. So you have a nutrient that is essential for hormonal health, muscle function, immune regulation, mood, cognitive performance, and sleep, and the majority of men over 50 are quietly, chronically running low on it, without any obvious single symptom that points directly to it. Because deficiency doesn't announce itself loudly, it whispers. It whispers in the form of fatigue that doesn't resolve with rest, in the form of a low mood that has no obvious cause, in the form of muscles that feel weaker than they should, in the form of sleep that is long in hours but shallow in quality. Now let's talk about the connection to testosterone specifically, because this is where the science becomes particularly compelling for men. Multiple peer-reviewed studies, including a significant randomized controlled trial published in the journal Hormone and Metabolic Research, have demonstrated a clear, direct relationship between vitamin D levels and testosterone levels in men. Men with sufficient vitamin D consistently show higher testosterone levels than men who are deficient. And when deficient men are supplemented with vitamin D3 over a period of months, testosterone levels rise meaningfully. Not dramatically, not as a replacement for medical treatment where it is genuinely needed, but significantly and measurably. The mechanism makes biological sense. Vitamin D3 receptors are present in the Leydig cells of the testes, the very cells responsible for producing testosterone. When those receptors are adequately stimulated, testosterone synthesis is supported. When vitamin D is low, that stimulation is impaired. And now the night timing. Why night? Specifically, because vitamin D3 is a fat-soluble vitamin. It requires dietary fat for absorption. And for most people, their largest meal containing adequate fat is consumed in the evening. Taking vitamin D3 with your evening meal therefore significantly improves its absorption compared to taking it on an empty stomach in the morning. But there is something even more important than absorption. Vitamin D3, when taken at night, appears to support the very sleep architecture that men over 50 are losing. Research published in peer-reviewed sleep journals has shown that adequate vitamin D levels are directly associated with better sleep quality, longer sleep duration, and reduced instances of waking during the night. One proposed mechanism is vitamin D's role in regulating the production of melatonin, the same hormone we discussed in part 2, whose decline is so consequential for men after 50. In other words, vitamin D3 taken at night is not just supporting your hormonal health. It is actively working alongside your body's natural sleep processes at precisely the moment your body needs that support the most. Now let's get practical. Because information without application is just entertainment. And I don't want you to walk away from this video having learned something interesting that you then do nothing with. I want this to actually change something for you. So let's talk about how to do this correctly. The first thing to understand is that vitamin D3 does not work optimally alone. This is one of the most important and most commonly overlooked pieces of the entire conversation. When you supplement with vitamin D3, your body begins absorbing significantly more calcium from your diet. That is one of vitamin D's primary roles, facilitating calcium absorption in the gut. Now, more calcium in the bloodstream needs to be directed somewhere. Ideally, it goes into your bones and your teeth where it belongs. But without the proper biological traffic controller, that calcium can end up depositing in places you absolutely do not want it, in your arterial walls, in your soft tissues, in your kidneys. The traffic controller is vitamin K2. Vitamin K2 activates two critical proteins, osteocalcin, which pulls calcium into bone tissue, and matrix glyprotein, which actively removes calcium from arterial walls and soft tissue. When you take D3 alongside K2, you are not just absorbing more calcium. You are directing that calcium intelligently, safely, and effectively. D3 and K2 are partners. They should almost always be taken together. This is not optional advice. This is fundamental biochemistry. The form of K2 that matters most is MK7, derived from a fermented soybean product called natto. MK7 has a significantly longer half-life in the body than MK4, meaning it stays active in your system for a far greater period and requires only a small daily dose to be effective. When you are looking for a supplement, look for D3 combined with K2 as MK7. Many good formulations already combine them in a single capsule. Now, dosage. I want to be careful here because I am not your physician and I am not prescribing anything. What I can tell you is what the research suggests and what clinical experience consistently shows. For most adults, particularly men over 50, who are not getting adequate sun exposure, doses in the range of 2,000 to 5,000 international units of D3 daily are commonly discussed in the literature as appropriate for maintaining sufficient blood levels. However, and this is important, the only way to know where you actually stand is to get your blood tested. Ask your doctor for a 25-hydroxyvitamin D test. It is a simple blood test. Your result will tell you everything you need to know about where you are starting from and how much supplementation your body actually needs. Do not guess. Test. Take your D3 and K2 with your evening meal. Not with a light snack, with a proper meal that contains fat, whether that is olive oil, avocado, eggs, fish, nuts, or any other whole food source of healthy fat. The fat is not optional. It is the vehicle through which fat-soluble vitamins are absorbed into your lymphatic system and then your bloodstream. Without fat, you may be swallowing your supplement and absorbing a fraction of what you paid for. Now let's talk about the lifestyle factors, because this is where most supplement conversations stop, and it is precisely where they should not stop. A supplement taken inside a broken lifestyle is like putting a fresh coat of paint on a crumbling wall. It might look better briefly, but the structure underneath is still compromised. Sleep hygiene for men over 50 is not a soft concept. It is a biological necessity. Your body does its hormonal repair work, testosterone replenishment, growth hormone release, cellular restoration almost exclusively during deep sleep. If your sleep is fragmented, shallow, or chronically short, no supplement in the world will fully compensate for that loss. So alongside your D3 and K2 in the evening, I want you to think seriously about your light environment after sunset. Artificial blue light from screens, your phone, your television, your laptop directly suppresses melatonin production. It tells your pineal gland that it is still daytime. It delays your sleep onset and reduces the depth of your early sleep cycles. Dimming your environment after 8 in the evening using blue light. Filtering on your devices or simply putting the phone down an hour before bed, these are not small things. They are meaningful biological interventions. Your evening meal composition also matters. A meal that is excessively high in refined carbohydrates spikes your insulin late at night, which disrupts cortisol rhythms and interferes with overnight hormonal balance. A meal built around quality protein, healthy fats, and fiber-rich vegetables creates a very different hormonal environment for sleep, one that is far more conducive to the deep, restorative cycles your body needs. And finally, magnesium. If vitamin D3 is the headline nutrient of this conversation, magnesium is the quietly essential co-star. Magnesium is required for the conversion of vitamin D into its active form in the body. Without adequate magnesium, your vitamin D supplementation is partially wasted. Magnesium is also directly involved in melatonin synthesis, in muscle relaxation, in nervous system calming, and in blood sugar regulation overnight. Magnesium glycinate taken in the evening alongside your D3 and K2 creates a genuinely powerful nutritional foundation for sleep quality and hormonal health in men over 50. These things work together. That is the principle I want you to leave this section with. No single nutrient, no single habit operates in isolation inside the human body. Everything is connected. Everything influences everything else. And when you begin to stack the right things together, the right nutrients at the right time inside the right lifestyle conditions, the results are not additive. They are synergistic. I want to close this conversation with something that goes beyond vitamins and hormones and blood tests, because as important as all of that is, and it genuinely is important, there is a deeper issue that I think needs to be addressed directly. And it is this: most men over 50 have been quietly taught to accept decline, not through any single conversation, not through any one moment, but gradually through 1,000 small signals from the culture around them. The jokes about getting older, The casual dismissiveness of symptoms that would be taken far more seriously in a younger man. The medical appointments were where concerns are normalized away rather than genuinely investigated. The advertising that simultaneously tells you that feeling exhausted and diminished is just aging, while selling you quick fixes that treat the symptom, without ever touching the cause. All of it adds up to a kind of silent permission to stop expecting more from your own health. I want to revoke that permission today. You are not at the end of your best years. You are not simply waiting out the clock. The biology of the human body, even the body of a man in his 50s, 60s, or beyond, retains a remarkable capacity for adaptation, restoration, and genuine improvement when it is given the right conditions. That is not motivational language. That is physiology. Cells respond to their environment. Hormones respond to inputs. Sleep architecture responds to the signals you send your nervous system each evening. The body is not a fixed, declining machine. It is a dynamic, responsive system that is constantly asking the question, what are you giving me to work with? And what most men over 50 are giving their bodies to work with is, through no fault of their own, not enough. Not enough of the right nutrients, not enough darkness, night, not enough quality sleep, not enough understanding of what is actually happening beneath the surface and what can genuinely be done about it. So let's bring this all together. What are we actually talking about here? We are talking about a man who understands that his body after 50 is navigating a genuine hormonal and metabolic shift, a decline in testosterone, a decline in melatonin, a disruption of sleep architecture, and a convergence of deficiencies that feed on each other in a quiet, accelerating cycle. We are talking about a nutrient, vitamin D3, that sits at the intersection of nearly all of those issues. A corticosteroid hormone, not merely a vitamin, that supports testosterone production at the cellular level, that regulates melatonin synthesis, that governs immune function, mood, muscle integrity, and the quality of sleep that makes everything else possible. We are talking about taking that D3 alongside vitamin K2 as MK7 at night with a fat-containing meal, so that absorption is maximized and calcium is directed safely and intelligently through the body. We are talking about adding magnesium glycinate to that evening routine as a cofactor that makes the entire system work more effectively. We are talking about dimming the lights after sunset, putting the screen down before bed, eating an evening meal that supports rather than disrupts the hormonal environment of sleep, getting a simple blood test so that you know your actual vitamin D levels rather than guessing in the dark. And underneath all of that, we are talking about a fundamental shift in how you relate to your own health after 50. A shift from passive acceptance to active, informed, deliberate participation. From "this is just how it is now" to "I understand what is happening and I know what to do about it." That shift is everything, because the man who understands his biology is not at the mercy of it. He is working with it. He is giving it what it needs. He is sleeping deeply, waking with energy, moving through his days with a sense of vigor and presence that the men around him, the ones who accepted the quiet decline, have stopped expecting for themselves. That man is available to you, not through a dramatic intervention, not through an expensive program or a complicated protocol, through consistent, well-informed, small daily decisions that compound over weeks and months into a genuinely different experience of being in your body. Now, I want to leave you with one practical step, just one, because I find that when people are given too many action points at once, they do none of them. So here is the one thing I want you to do before this week is over. Book a blood test. Ask your doctor specifically for your 25-hydroxyvitamin D level. Write it down if you need to 25-hydroxyvitamin D. Get that number. Know where you are starting from, because you cannot navigate intelligently without knowing your current position. Everything else we have talked about today flows from that number. If your levels are sufficient, wonderful, you now know how to maintain and support them properly. If your levels are deficient, and statistically, there is a very significant chance that you now know exactly what to do about it, how to do it, when to do it, and what to pair it with to make it work as effectively as possible. This is your health. Nobody is going to advocate for it more than you. Nobody is going to pay closer attention to it than you. Nobody has more to gain from it than you and the people in your life who depend on you, who love you, who want you present and vigorous and fully yourself for as many years as possible. You owe it to them. But more than that, you owe it to yourself. Take care of this body. It is the only one you have. And it is far more capable of recovery, resilience, and renewal than anyone may have told you. Thank you for watching. If this video added something meaningful to your understanding, please share it with a man in your life who needs to hear it. Leave a comment below telling me what you are going to do differently starting this week. And if you have not already, subscribe, because this conversation is one we are going to keep having, going deeper, going further, giving you the kind of information that actually changes things. I will see you in the next one.